Set condition 1 throughout the ship. This is not a drill. Repeat. Action stations. Action stations. Set condition 1 throughout the ship. This is not a drill.
Action stations. Set condition 1 throughout the podcast. This is Set Condition 1, a night shift radio production. I am SC1 Actual Caleb, and with me is my XO Kitzy.
Hello.
And what did we decide? Do you want to be the president of the 12 colonies, Andrea?
I love that. Yeah. Hello.
Welcome. So this is our first official episode of Set Condition 1. If you've joined us for our introduction last week, you know kind of what we're about here. But of course, we're going to talk about Battlestar Galactica, and very excited. And for Kitzy and myself, this is a journey down just a treasured story that we both love. But for Andrea, this is a brand new experience. So can't wait to dive into what you thought after getting your initial questions and speculation last episode. Quick warning, we're not going to be shy at all about spoilers for the episodes we watched, although we will try to refrain from spoilers for future episodes. So if you're also enjoying this for the first time with Andrea, we'll try not to ruin it for you because it's a great story. But let's kick it off with a quick recap. So today we watched the miniseries Part 1, which is the reintroduction, the reboot of Battlestar Galactica, originally in 2003, brought back in 2004. And we learn that there was a war about 40 years ago or so between humans and their creations, the Cylons, who are a artificial intelligence robotic race created to serve mankind. They got smart, they got salty, and they got even. And then they fucked off. After a long and brutal war, they fucked off for their own planet to just live in peace and not have to deal with our bullshit anymore. And
who could blame them?
Yeah, who could blame them? And nobody has heard from them for roughly 40 years or so. But as we mentioned in the last episode, a space station was created in neutral territory, and every year a human delegate goes and sits and waits just in case they want to reach out and touch us again. But they never do until now. We open on this human delegate in the space station waiting, thinking, once again, no one's going to show up, but this time someone does. Two of the Cylon Centurions, who we're familiar with from the past history of Battlestar Galactica, appear, but then a woman appears. We don't know anything about this woman, but she introduces herself, and then they blow the fucking space station up, thus starting the new Cylon War. Now, the Battlestar Galactica is a relic of the old war, and they're getting ready to decommission it. And we slowly get introduced to the crew and the remainder of the cast as they're preparing for this ceremony. And most importantly, is Commander Adama, played by the just stellar Edward James Olmos.
The majestic Edward James Olmos.
the near godlike Edward James Olmos. And we meet the rest of his crew, such standouts as his son, Captain Lee Adama, who we learned that they're somewhat at odds as father and son. And of course, there's Kara Thrace, known as Starbuck, who is the
troublemaker.
The troublemaker, the take no shit rebel.
Plucky.
Yes, very plucky. And the XO, Colonel Ty, who's just a gritty, salty old man who's drunk most of the time. I can relate.
Shit, maybe I should have been actual and you should have been the XO.
That's true. I guess there's still time. The crew of this ship are preparing for this ceremony to decommission it. They're going to be turning it into a museum that kind of acknowledges and celebrates the history of humanity and of this war, and the peace that they've had ever since. And as this ceremony is coming to a close, there's a massive attack across all 12 colonies. And we learn that several of them, although not apparently all of them, which seems kind of interesting and oversight to me, are just nuked into oblivion. And so the last survivors of humanity are trying to decide whether to run or to fight. And this is kind of where we're left with the episode.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get into it. Andrea,
Into it.
first thoughts.
So I liked it. And what if that's all I said? No.
It was good. What do you want from me?
Yeah, God. I have a kind of, I guess, outside of the show question in terms of the creator's intention. Y'all told me that it was it was just like intended to be a miniseries, or were they hoping that it would get enough action to kind of blow it up into a regular series?
That's a great question that I'm not 100% sure the answer to. I know it was introduced in 2003 as this 2-part miniseries, and then later came back in 2004 as the extended series with that as the pilot. Now,
I'm going to assume that there was at least a hope or an intention for a continuation of some sort, because they do set up a lot of stuff that doesn't resolve in the miniseries.
Which I guess I don't know yet, because I've only seen the first half.
True,
Okay.
yeah.
So it looks like that is probably the case. The only reference that I can specifically see is that it began as a 4-hour miniseries pilot on the SyFy channel in late 2003.
Okay.
So it seems like, yes, they probably made it in such a way that, like, if they were never able to continue with the series, like, here's this, like, really interesting, like, somewhat long cinematic feature of, a rebooted Battlestar Galactica. It's not satisfying, but, like, it looks really cool. But our goal is to show you more.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this sort of exposition heavy beginning and how there was a lot of information, obviously, that had to be dumped, but this sort of Aaron Sorkin tour guide long shot in the beginning where they're kind of giving you all the information through the decommissioning of the ship, which I thought was actually pretty clever, and it didn't feel too heavy-handed until the second watch through today. So I was impressed with the setting up there.
That's actually a really interesting thought, because, like, I've never really considered how much exposition is given in that intro, because I've always focused so much on, like, figuring out, like, who the characters are and, like, what their place is, but they really do give you a shit ton of history.
It's a lot, yeah.
And I think the fact that I didn't notice that again until we watched it the second time kind of speaks to what you were just saying about that it does feel, it feels pretty natural, which I think can be hard to do. So,
and I think that they might have known. Well, I think that, there's a lot to set up to get the story going, and I think they didn't want to waste a lot of time, because they could have taken a long time to get all that backstory in, but I think they really wanted to get to the kind of the meat and potatoes of the story pretty quickly.
Yeah,
which I appreciate. Like, it does not take long for shit to pop off.
No, it really doesn't. And it's interesting the way that they approach this, because it is a complete retelling of the old story. It's not like a picking up where the original series left off or anything like that. It's completely reimagined, and in my opinion, significantly more action in the way that they approach it. But they have to figure out a way to kind of retell the setup, the backstory for this, without then having to basically give you what came 5 years later with Caprica. And then I think there was like a feature like movie at one point that was set like during the war, featuring the Commander Adama like as a young pilot, which
cool.
I haven't seen yet.
Speaking of which, can we talk about how in the photo of young Commander Adama with Lee and Zach, his two sons, how much he looks like the Fonz in that photo?
Right? That's definitely a photo of Henry Winkler.
Which is just wild.
Equally cool, so it works.
Yeah, but I think Caleb, you left out a very important plot point of the synopsis.
I did skim very heavily, so
you did, but something we learn very early on is that the Cylons look like us now.
Oh, we learn that, but the characters don't really learn that right away.
That's true.
There's two instances where they figure it out, and they both involve the same woman, played by Tricia Helfer, who was just referred to as Number 6. She's the one on the space station just before they destroy it, and she's also the one that's been seducing a very important character on Caprica, in Caprica City, to gain access to the planetary defenses.
Gaius Baltar.
Gaius motherfucking Baltar.
Bad guy with a name like that. That's all you need to know is that name.
It really is like he's either going to be like ultimate sleazeball or like
Action hero.
I was going to say Mad King.
Also, okay, yeah.
Mad King.
Yep. Nope, that's better.
Emperor Gaius III. You know?
I am Gaius Baltar!
Yeah,
you will bow before me!
Absolutely, like, egomaniacal villain. Which I feel like he's a very different character in the original, but that's neither here nor there.
A lot of them are.
So he's a very famous scientist, but he's also like incredibly arrogant and thinks very highly of him.
Yeah,
that's an understatement.
He's also
very highly of himself.
I mean, he's a straight up sociopath.
Yes, that's true.
But,
and doesn't even give any thought to the fact that he's basically like selling major like world security secrets for sex.
Well, and there's this part where like when Six, the blonde woman Six, reveals to him that she's a Cylon, and at first he's like, "No, of course you're not. You're making that shit up."
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And then she's like, "No, you know I'm not. Like, why did you think I really wanted access to the defense mainframe?" And then it kind of clicks for him like what he's done.
Yeah,
and his biggest concern isn't, oh shit, a lot of people are going to die. Uh-huh. Oh shit, the city's going to get destroyed. The planet's going to get destroyed. His concern is, oh shit, people are going to know it was me, and I'm going to get in trouble.
Yes.
And how can I spin this so that I'm not the one at fault here?
His first thought is actually to call his lawyer.
Yes.
He actually picks up the phone and starts to call his fucking lawyer.
So basically, no, I don't want to go political with this. I was going to liken him to Donald Trump, but we're not going there. We're not going there. We're not doing it.
Fair.
We're not doing it. This is getting cut. We're not doing it. Yeah. So, but before we get too deep into Gaius Baltar here,
Loki. I've been thinking of him as
nice.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I would like to know your thoughts on Six, Andrea.
I have questions in terms of, so we know there are 12, and at first I wasn't sure if we were saying there are 12 distinct, like models, like there are 12, and if you find them like Horcruxes, they're all gone, or if it were more like iPhones, right? We've got 11. It doesn't mean they're only 11. And I think that what I figured out then is that there are probably many, right, of them floating around. And if she's 6 in a line of like updated Cylon models, what 12 must look like.
The iPhone analogy is actually really interesting because there are 12 distinct models, but there are many copies of each. So the one that was on Caprica City is the same model, but was a different physical copy than the one that was on the space station, which got blown the fuck up.
Yes.
And she actually does speak to that when she says, when this body dies, my consciousness will be uploaded into a new one.
Right.
Now, what's not clear is the one that was on the space station the same one that's on Caprica City, or are they different, different consciousnesses?
That's true.
They never really addressed that.
Because that's something like we haven't even necessarily gotten into in the show yet, is that the distinct models can have separate, distinct versions of themselves out there in the wild at the same time. So, of course, they develop distinct personalities and memories.
It's like multiplicity.
Kind of.
Exactly like multiplicity.
Well, actually, I wouldn't say they develop their own personalities, because the personality is pretty standard.
That's fair, yeah.
Like within a model, the personality is very standard, but their experiences and their memories are different. But also, well, you know what?
So like the photo album on my iPhone v the photo album on yours.
Yeah, like the software is the same. The features are all the same. It does the same thing. It has the same annoying bugs, but you have different pictures than I do.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's a really good analogy.
I like this iPhone analogy. I feel like it's not too long before the iPhones do look like us, and maybe that's our Cylons. With that in mind, why don't we go ahead and take a quick break? We're going to hear from our sponsor for this week, and then we'll come back and dive into more of the events of miniseries Part 1.
Hey everyone, I'm Kitzy.
And I'm Caleb, and this is Left of the Dial, a music podcast.
Every week, we each dig into our collections for a record we love, or a new record we're excited about, and talk about it.
We'll share clips of songs that stand out to us, and discuss why we chose each one, what we love about it, what we don't, and why the record was important to us.
Hopefully, we'll find some new music to love with every episode, and maybe you will too.
So join us every Friday for new episodes at leftofthedial.fm,
or wherever podcasts are sold. And we're back.
And we're back.
And we're back.
We have returned.
We've returned, and the Cylons have returned.
So I was gonna say during the copy we downloaded our consciousnesses into new bodies and have returned.
I would like to download my consciousness into a new body and get the fuck out of here. Not here being the podcast, here being my house where I've been for as long as the Cylons were dormant, it feels like. I wonder how that joke's going to play in 2 months when the Bears.
Yeah, we should try to stay away from current event humor as much as we can, seeing as how in advance we're recording some of these.
So I feel like there's another major character who I kind of intentionally skipped over in the recap, but that's because I wanted to come back and do more of a deep dive into her and her introduction, and that is the Secretary of Education, Laura Roslin.
Oh hell yeah! I love Laura Roslin.
Yeah,
she is just a badass. Very early on, she is on a transport ship with some other just random people that had gone to the Galactica to. I'm not really sure why they were there. I guess it was the ceremony, and then they were coming back to Caprica on this transport ship, and that's when the whole war broke. And so they were kind of mid-transit when it was like, oh shit, now there's nowhere to go.
Well, they talked to her about some of the educational parts of what the museum that Galactica is going to become. So I think she's there literally in her capacity as a representation of the education branch of government.
Oh, that's right. Because they get into, actually, this is really important. They get into that whole thing where she wants to update computer systems on the Galactica to get them networked together so that they're more efficient for the teachers. And Commander Dama is all absolutely the fuck not. You are not networking computers on my ship, even though he's retiring and it's not his ship anymore. But and he talks about how that was how they stayed alive in the original Cylon War 40 years ago, was because they kind of went backwards in their technology because the Cylons were so advanced that they could hack their stuff and shut things down. And so by keeping computers unnetworked on the ship, the Cylons couldn't get in and do their Cylon-y stuff.
I do love that he he specifically says, like, as long as I am in command, like, as long as this is my ship. So, like, he acknowledges that there's a very, like, finite period of time where he has any say, but while he does, God damn it, he does.
Yeah. He's very stern about it. And that's awesome. And I think that's nope, that'd be a spoiler. Okay. So, but Laura Roslin, something I noticed this watch that I've never noticed before is, I guess it's important to say that she becomes the president of the 12 colonies by way of everyone above her in the line of succession dying in the war.
There's like 42 of them.
Yeah.
She's very far down the chain.
Yeah, she's very far down the chain, but she's the top one that survives, so she becomes the de facto president. Which is kind of fitting because on this transport ship she was on, she kind of just took charge anyway, and started giving orders. And there's even a point where one of the passengers is talking to Leodama, who comes on board that ship because he's their escort. And he's like, hey, I'd appreciate it if someone, qualified was in charge. And Lee's like, what? What's wrong with your pilot? He's like, he's not the one giving orders. And so Lee goes up ready to like confront her, but she's just like, fucking taking names and kicking ass and doing a job, and Lee just looks at the other guy and he's like, she's in charge.
I love that's one of the best moments in the whole episode.
It is, and it's so fitting for her personality. Just be like, okay, I you know what, this is my job. I'm going to do it.
You put a good teacher in front of an unruly classroom.
Yes,
She just stood at the front. She said, "I'll wait."
And I love because in the last episode we mentioned that there was a teacher involved and that she was very important. So I kind of want to get your thoughts being introduced to Laura Roslin in this first episode.
She is the. Oh,
sorry. I just want to say one more thing, and then I want to kick it over to you. So, so she when she takes the oath of the presidency, this is the thing I didn't notice before. They're doing that thing where they like say, I state your name, blah blah blah, and then Laura Roslin's reciting it back, and the person telling her what the oath is says like, I, Laura Roslin, take the office of the presidency, and Laura Roslin responds with, I accept the office of the presidency.
Yes.
And I thought that was so subtle, but such an important distinction.
It shows how like she's reluctantly stepping up. Like she had never planned to ever be in this position, but realizes how important it is that she do it for now.
Exactly. It's just she never wanted this power. She still doesn't really want this power, but she's like, this is my duty and my responsibility. I accept that, and I will do the best that I can. And I respect the hell out of her for that.
Yes.
But I think what we were really getting to is, Andrew, we'd love to hear your thoughts on Laura Roslin, especially because I don't know, actually, I don't even know if Caleb, you know this, but Andrea is a teacher herself.
Oh, I guessed as much from the banter last time, but yeah, now I'm very interested to hear your thoughts.
She's the love of my life already, and if anything bad happens to her, and y'all brought me into this, you guys are going to have a lot to answer for.
Well, I mean, she already does have cancer.
She does. So that was the one moment I think that felt completely unnatural to me. Like I thought back to a class I took in undergrad, a playwriting class, and I'm not a playwright, and I had a character who was diagnosed early on with cancer directly that way, and everybody in class was like, that is completely unbelievable that they would just sit her down, throw it at her, and then be like, well, see ya. So I will say that, but that's something that then is just kind of, I guess, going to be in the back of our mind, that she's kind of got a sort of like ticking time bomb inside her, right?
Basically.
Although, I guess we don't know what.
Although, don't we all really?
Yeah. I guess that we don't know too much about the advancements in medicine, though, or am I to assume that we're still? Anyway.
Rest assured, that will be addressed in great detail going forward, and that's all I'm going to say about that. It like that they don't just kind of like forget about that. It does become like a whole thing. And I don't think that's a spoiler because that's just how fucking cancer works. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you don't drop a bombshell like that in episode 1 and then never address it through 4 seasons or whatever.
Yeah. Well, see, then that's those kinds of things are why I was wondering how. what they thought the odds were, I guess, that they were going to get to move past the miniseries. And just me trying to make predictions for what could happen in the next hour and a half or whatever. Yeah.
I love when we were watching it just now, you mentioned something about the guy that stands up and protests about her being in charge.
Oh, and she sends him below deck.
Yeah.
You give the unruly student something to do away from the rest of the class. Yeah, go clap the erasers.
That's basically what she did.
Yeah.
Go clap the erasers.
Yep. I teach.
Is that why I spent so much time clapping erasers?
100%. Yes. For sure.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. Although I'm an adjunct instructor at like university, so to say like I would send although I guess I still would. I don't treat them that much different than I might a kindergarten class.
They don't act much different.
Yeah, I love my students, and I wish that we were in class together right now, not online. And that's my disclaimer before I say it's exactly the same. But I love those big, tall kindergartners very much.
There is a lot that happens in this episode, and there's a couple more specific scenes that I wanted to touch on if we don't get to them. But I also am curious, like, what else kind of jumped out at you as this action is being set?
I have so obviously the like family dynamics between the Adamas, of course, tale as old as time, right? There's a lot of stuff, and I can't imagine I'm saying anything new that felt very kind of like Shakespearean to me that way.
Okay.
And part of that got me sort of in that headspace is because I thought Roslin's name was Rosalind with a D, and that it was a Shakespeare thing. And then I got really crazy with the names. I don't know if I said that I'm an English instructor, so like everything I do is going to be looking at this through that kind of lens.
I love it.
Whether I want to or not. So that ended up being wrong because it's not quite the same, but that doesn't mean it's not still. Anyway, should I also, is this the...
Yeah, no, just keep going.
My ADD disclaimer? Should I also put that in here? So, but she is great, and what was her name?
And just for the record, because I know someone is going to be upset about this, it's a legitimate diagnosis, not just like, oh, haha, I'm so ADD.
Yeah, no, that is
like it's something you legitimately have as diagnosed by a medical professional.
Yeah, as
so nobody tweeted Andrea and give her shit for that.
Unless you want to tweet at me and talk about ADD/ADHD.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
I'm down for that all day.
Right on.
So see, here it is in action.
Yes. Go brain, go.
President Roslin is great. I have Ganymede written down here, and I couldn't tell you why.
I couldn't either.
I'm sorry. Can we go back? What was the question that led us there?
I was thinking if there was anything else that, like, in particular jumped out.
Shakespeare. That makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah. Family dynamics and et cetera, et cetera. Oh boy, there were a lot of. Here's Galactica Tactica.
Galactica Tactica.
You're gonna have to. I would just brown like.
Okay,
for a second.
I'll jump in a couple things. There's a couple points in characters that we should probably talk a little bit about at least. Mm-hmm. And the first one is I think we need to talk about the relationship between Kara Thrace, call sign Starbuck, and the XO Salt High.
Yes,
because there's a very, very tense moment towards the beginning of the episode where Saltai is off duty in the or not the officers' lounge, but the with the pilots and the other folks. They're playing essentially poker, but whatever
full colors.
Yeah, whatever the Battlestar Galactica equivalent of poker is. They're playing cards. They're betting. They're smoking cigars. Saltai's drunk. Shocker.
Right.
And he and Kara just jabbing at each other verbally, just like he brings up her being, in legal trouble as a, young adult. And then, she jabs at him about his, strained relationship with his wife. And and they're just kind of poking at each other, and everyone else around is like trying to change the subject, but they're just like needling in on each other. And then Kara wins the hand, to which SyFy throws the table up. She decks him in the face, and then the whole room goes to pull the two apart, and becomes a whole thing. And he's like, "I got you now. You struck a superior officer. I'm going to throw you in the brig." Blah blah blah. And then so there's obviously some tension between them, right? They don't get along. This is not a new thing. This is clearly an ongoing with them. But then later, Ty is talking to Commander Adama in his quarters, and Adama's kind of like, dude, you need to back off of her a little bit, kind of showing that he's got, Adama has this kind of soft spot for Starbuck. He's, he almost kind of looks at her like a daughter, and, knows that she's kind of a pain in the ass, but also she's a really fucking good pilot, and, ultimately she's a good person. And there's this point where he, Adama says like, well, you did flip the table first, and he's like, no, I didn't, unless I did. And he's like, you did.
Like that puzzled look on his face, like, shit, wait, did I?
Yeah.
Me halfway through every game of Monopoly I've ever played with my family, so I get it. Like, I didn't necessarily have a ton of empathy for him, but I definitely sympathized with him there in that moment, or maybe the other way around. But either way, that I kind of get.
Yeah, and you mentioned that Adama almost treats Kara like a daughter. There's very much like a father-daughter relationship there, whereas Ty is. I'm struggling to find the right family analogy, but almost like
grumpy uncle.
Yeah, a grumpy uncle that like everyone just kind of tolerates, but like you're gonna get in a fight with him if you're around too long.
Yeah, he's that relative you don't want to talk politics at Thanksgiving with.
Yes. One thing that I think is really important, and we did mention this briefly in our own pilot, is like how much pain they take to really demonstrate like how low tech the Galactica really is, and like how important that becomes as the series progresses. Like, you mentioned like they're on basically like voice only wireless communication between ships. Like they would literally communicate on like wired phones between decks, like calling the fucking bullpen. They have paper like printouts of like their duty rosters. They're using like grease pens to mark up like maps and like damage reports and stuff like that. And like it's all very much like it feels like they're on like not even like a current day, like and like mid 20th century like battleship in the middle of the ocean, and not a fucking starship in space.
Yeah, I mean, really, you could really put these characters and what they're doing in that scene, and it would make total sense. Like, there's really nothing high tech. I mean, other than the fact that it's a spaceship, there is nothing high tech about this Battlestar.
Yeah, it gives it this very, for me anyway, sort of like almost out of time feeling. Especially that was the first thing that really popped for me in terms of the tech, and I had to be like, Kitzy had to remind me why this was the case. The sort of overhead projector, grease pen, writing up stuff that they used, and it is also just like I'm wondering how much of that is budget questions. I'm always really, especially those shows like Battlestar being right around the time as like a few years later than Buffy starting, and Firefly, and these shows that sort of had to decide where and when their money went. And I just thought that was like a sort of smart way from that end too.
Maybe.
Like, well, we don't have to have weird holograms, and we don't have to beam anybody up.
And it's great because, like, we see when we're on Caprica City, we see that this is a very technologically advanced city. Obviously, we know that they created sentient artificial intelligence, And they go out of their way to talk about how Galactica is a relic compared to like all of the modern Battlestars and like even like the other ships of the fleet that aren't Battlestars. And they poke fun at it a lot. But when it comes down to an actual fight, they send out a squadron of brand new, the Viper, basically like fighter jets, but in space, against the Cylons. And they're all taken out of commission immediately by some secret Cylon weapon. And they essentially have to like dust off, like quickly retrofit and send into action like museum pieces for like the Mark II, like the old Vipers that used to be part of the ship's complement, and like send those into battle. And like that's the only way that they have a chance against these new Cylon fighters. And it's fucking wild. They're like they literally have to, like their lives depend on old outdated tech that everyone spends the first like 20 minutes or so making fun of.
Yeah. I also love, since you brought up the Vipers, I love the fact that they don't have, there's no lasers in this show.
Yeah.
They use bullets and missiles, and I think that's super cool. Like, I think that, and that really, I think, plays to that, old school military aesthetic that the show does so well. But like, I don't think this show works with lasers. Like, it just wouldn't,
No. The sight of like just a straight up old school airplane dogfight in space is so badass. It's such a weird juxtaposition.
Well, and even the Cylons don't have lasers. The Cylons are using bullets too, which I think is kind of cool, because they could very easily have gone with the lasers option for Cylons, since they're so much more advanced, but they chose not to. And I think this is going to sound weird for like a show that's science fiction that takes place in space with artificial intelligence, sentient beings, but like I think it keeps the show very grounded in reality.
I agree
with the day-to-day minutia of it that makes it so much more relatable to me than something like like Star Wars or Star Trek would be, which are again also very cool franchises, but like they're very clearly this other this whole other level of science fiction.
There's a grittiness to the Battlestar world that is put out right from the get-go, that it shows you that this is meant to be like this like oddly timeless feel. Like, is this the future? Is this like kind of like a Star Wars type thing where it's long ago in a galaxy far away? Like why is this like technologically advanced society like still relying on physical ordnance, and like what, like, and it gives this, like you said, this grounded, this kind of realism feel to that you don't get in a lot of sci-fi. Like I love the new Star Trek series, for example, but they're very flashy, they're very bright, and they're
shiny.
Exactly. And they're everything that Battlestar Galactica is not, and is not intended to be. And I love how that lets it stand on its own.
Yeah.
I think timelessness is exactly right. Like everything looked really good to me. Like I wasn't laughing at any of the effects or anything that they tried to get across, and thinking about it in terms of those other shows, like I was saying, which were pretty concurrent with it. It was just a really smart choice.
Yeah, I think there's I'm interested to see this going forward in later episodes as the show gets more budget and becomes an actual series, not just the miniseries. But like, there was one scene where towards the beginning where Lee was landing his Viper on the Battlestar Galactica, and they just CGI of it looked real cheesy to me. But it's just this like one moment, and then everything else looked great. So I'm interested to see if, like, because this is also my first time watching it. I'm watching it on a 4K TV, and Battlestar Galactica was not. Was not shot in 4K. I don't think you can get it in 4K. If someone finds, someone knows it's in 4K somewhere, please let me know, because I would love to see it. But so it might just be that I'm watching on a TV that was more detailed than this show was meant to handle. But that some of those early CGI renders looked a little off to me.
Yeah, I'm rewatching it on a TV that feels appropriate to what I would have watched it on in 2004.
That's probably better, honestly. there's a couple more characters I think we have to talk about because they're setting up some plot stuff that's going to become really important later on. And I think that one of them is Galen Tyrol. We need to talk about him.
Yeah, so I drew a complete blank on who that was, but yes, you're
The
absolutely
chief.
right.
The chief.
Chief Tyrol.
Chief Tyrol.
You used his first name, and I'm like, who the fuck is Galen?
I don't think they use his first name until like season 3. He's just Chief Tyrol.
Yep.
For a while, but yeah, Chief Tyrol is right away one of my favorite characters. You know, he's a real salt of the earth. He's the crew chief. You know, he's the guy in charge of all the mechanics, the deckhands, the regular working Joes, just trying to keep the ship running. You can tell he's got a great rapport with his crew. He's got, he really cares about his people. There's, a scene in that first battle where, Galactica gets hit with a nuke and they've got some damage going on and there's some fires and they have to make the tough call. Saul, the XO, makes the tough call of like having to seal off some bulkheads and vent a section of the ship that has like 100 men in it that are like fighting the fire. These are all like, Tyrol's, people that report to him.
Yeah.
And Tyrol's up there like, you need to give me a minute to get them out of there. I need 60 seconds. And Ty's like, we don't have 60 seconds. We're going to lose the ship. And, makes the call to vent it and essentially kill those people. You can tell, Tyrol is just upset beyond belief about that. And, and I get it. Like those are his people. He's worked with them side by side for years. He cares about them. He's a mentor to them, and he's responsible for their safety ultimately, and so it's it's a real tense moment, and he's real upset, and he even goes to Commander Adama to say like, that was some bullshit. I told that son of a bitch, and Adama was like, he made a tough call in a very tense moment. I would have made the same call. Like you need to respect that. He made the call he made, and that's where we're at, and we have a job to do. Like,
and speaking to the more like gritty realism of the show, like there's no shields, there's no like, we're at 40%, but holding like, they take a nuke to like the side of the ship, and like the ship is on fire. Like there are holes in the hull, people are dying. Like it's an immediate like consequence to that action. But that's like that scene and like a couple others, like they don't explicitly like shine a light on it, but they kind of start to reveal the cracks in like the class divides that we talked a little bit about last time. How like there's a definite difference between like the pilots and the deckhands, and like the swagger versus the hard work and like kind of unappreciated like behind the scenes sort of stuff. And I think that's going to be really important going forward.
Yeah, I mean the pilots are hot shit, and the deckhands are the scrubs.
It's another thing that felt particularly Shakespearean to me.
Yeah,
I kept thinking of, and I don't know their names. The girl with the bangs. I don't think we've gotten her name yet.
Callie.
But yeah, Callie.
Yeah, you did tell me that, but I was acting as if I didn't.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah.
No, yeah, because I'm trying very hard not to.
I mean, it's not really like a spoiler.
Anything, yeah.
I think it's just,
but her and her boyfriend, the one who doesn't make it into part 2,
the crispy man.
Yeah,
Ooh,
crispy
yeah,
critter,
crispy.
poor guy. Yeah, real bummer.
Crispy Joe, I think his name is.
Yep, but yeah, it's how he's credited. It was an odd choice, but I mean, but they just, again, they reminded me like they had like a sort of, I kept thinking like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern kind of thing.
Okay.
And yeah, I think that it's another one of those things that they're, like you said, to me anyway, felt like a very subtle introduction to something that I'm assuming is going to be explored as we move forward for sure.
Yeah.
I'm interested to see how that goes.
From my perspective, I think the final thing that I would feel remiss if we didn't discuss is when the Raptor lands on Caprica. With
Before
Boomer
we
and
get
Hilo.
there,
Okay.
We do need to talk about Boomer for a second, though.
Yeah.
Okay, Boomer.
Yeah, there's a. Did you notice that someone literally says "Okay, Boomer" in the miniseries? Like she says something over the radio, and someone says "Okay, Boomer."
Which I love. I have seen memes referencing Sharon. With that line.
But yeah, that's actually literally said in Andrea. I didn't even catch it. Andrea pointed that out. She just starts laughing. I'm like, what? What happened? She's like, okay, Boomer. And I'm like, oh. But Boomer is a Raptor pilot. Raptors are the kind of like heavier, like the Vipers are like the fighter jets. The Raptors kind of like the helicopter almost. Yeah. They seem to have more advanced like radar detection systems, or I guess DRADIS is what it's called in Battlestar.
Yeah. And they know how to open doors. Jurassic Park.
I'll edit in some crickets there. But they seem to be like the support ship that goes out with the Vipers, and so she's a Raptor pilot, and there's a scene where she comes in off a landing and is like bitching and complaining about a gimbal on her ship that's not right. And Chief Tyrol himself is like, I pulled that gimbal 3 times. I stripped it twice. I've taken every part of the ship apart and put it back. Like, and he's like, it's not the gimbal's not the problem, whatever. And they're like, ranting and raving at each other. And they go off into like a storeroom and lock the door and just start making out right away. Which, and this is important to point out because Boomer's a pilot, and Galen is the crew chief, she technically outranks him and is his superior officer, even though he doesn't really report to her. So, like, that's a big no-no. You can't do that.
Yeah.
So they have to make out in secret.
And who do they think they're fooling, really?
Yeah, everyone knows. Everyone knows. It's very obvious. At least the crew knows. The deck crew, they all know for sure.
Oh, yeah. Nobody's missing that.
Yeah.
They may have disclosed to HR in a deleted scene. We don't know.
That is entirely possible.
Or like on the ship.
And they probably figure that it's fine because the Galactica is being decommissioned and they're going to go off to other assignments and it's not going to matter.
Yeah.
But
that's true. Like they probably weren't planning on working together much longer, and like who knows. But but man, life has a way of throwing curveballs at you, doesn't it?
It comes at you fast.
It really does. Speaking of life come at you fast, Boomer is out supporting a squadron of Viper pilots with her co-pilot Hilo, who is, I guess, like the DRADIS guy in the back of the Raptor there.
Yeah.
And they get hit pretty early on with some shrapnel from a Viper that gets shot and blown up. And, Hilo takes a piece of shrapnel to the leg. There's a hole in the ship that's, venting all their air out. They've got a fuel leak. And so Hilo patches the hole to regain the integrity of the hull quick, and then starts, patching up his leg. Boomer realizes they can't make it back to Galactica with this fuel leak. So they've got to actually land on Caprica, which has, as they know, has just been attacked.
It's like, I feel like the bombs are still going off when they land.
Some of them are. And so, and as Hilo points out, like the entire Cylon armada is between them and Caprica. So, Boomer, being the clever pilot that she is, just kills the ship completely, and they just drift silently to Caprica and basically just look like space junk. And so they land to fix the fuel leak. And then, Caleb, why don't you tell us what happens next?
So as they're fixing the ship and preparing to get the fuck back out of there, just the two of them, over the hill comes just a stampede of humans escaping the destruction of their planet. And of course, all 100 or so of them think that they're going to shove into this Raptor that can hold upwards of like 4 to 6 people comfortably, but it's
basically a minivan.
Yeah, it's like there normally is 2 people on it, and somehow they think they're all going to shove onto it. And of course, every one of them thinks that they're important enough to save. But then there's a compromise made, like at least take the children, which I get myself in trouble here and say, like, there were, like, you can have more children. There are probably people with skills that are valuable in a war in that group. But no, by all means, take the children who are just going to take up space and eat your food, whatever.
I'm sorry, the queer theorist in me wants to go off so hard on why I am so on your side with that, but we could save that for the Patreon. But I think that, I think somebody literally says, think of the children, like, which is a Simpsons joke. Like, it's not.
Yeah.
Won't somebody think of the children?
It's a very cliche line.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I've thought about them, but like.
Yeah, I thought about it and.
I get, like, you want to try to save the children, but also we're fighting a war, and, like, maybe we need people that can fight.
Yeah, maybe, like, go hide somewhere, and if we win this shit, we'll come back and get you.
And if not, well, good luck.
And if not, well, yeah, you're probably better off where we left you, honestly. So they realize that they've got just, like, one spot left, and, they do a lottery, which I guess they have time for. And it turns out that a fucking 300-year-old woman wins the lottery. And so
who can't even read the number on her ticket.
Yeah. Once again, like, not to shit on, old woman and say that she doesn't deserve to live, but, like, not terribly valuable to the war effort since she can't, I can't find my glasses to read this. Her glasses are on her head. Like, again, I feel really bad for her, but, like, she's not going to contribute. She should probably stay and help take care of the children who should also be left behind. And in this crowd is our beloved villain, Gaius Baltar, who, upon being recognized immediately, is like, I didn't do anything. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it wasn't me. I didn't give away the secrets.
Oh, that's so great. Because Hilo's just like, hey, aren't you guys Baltar? He's like, I haven't done anything. And then tries to deflect because he's actually the one that reads the number for the old woman.
And you think that he's going to be like, oh, like, you didn't get picked. Oh, but it's me.
Yeah, there's this moment where he's, like, holding the number, and you can tell he's thinking about being like, oh, I've got it. I've got, number 47 or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. But then, like, immediately he tries to deflect off of him. He's like, this woman's got 47. Yeah, look, come on down. Like, immediately tries to get the attention off of himself. But Hilo, of course, realizing that, Gaius Baltar is one of the greatest minds of our time. Mm-hmm. And Hilo's, a military dude, Gaius Baltar, you're probably going to need him to keep things going. So offers to give up his seat, much to Sharon's protest.
Yeah. Like, realistically, like, keep the trained, like, Raptor pilot, take the scientist, leave the kids and old lady. Like, there's math here that works for me. Mm-hmm. But the plot must go on. And so all of these people are left behind on the planet to their fate. One of whom, like, tries to jump on the wing of the Raptor as it's taking off. I'm like, I don't know what you think you're accomplishing, sir. Other than getting shot.
What is he planning on holding on as they go into space? Like, what is your plan, sir?
I would really like to give him the benefit of the doubt to say that he just didn't think it through.
He saw that.
He clearly was panicking, obviously. Yeah. I mean, it's a traumatic situation, but it's like, this isn't like a bus. You're not going to, like, skateboard off the side of it. Fucking Marty McFly style. Until you get to your destination.
He saw that Facebook video of the kitten who traveled 500 miles in the engine of some family's car, right? And somehow miraculously survived.
We'll make sure that gets in the show notes.
Poor traumatic.
But yeah, Hilo shoots his ass. He's like, you get your ass off there.
I'm staying. You're staying. You're also bleeding now. You might want to look into that.
Yeah, Hilo is not fucking around. He just gave up his seat so those people could live, and he is not about to let some just nobody take that down. So, so he's there behind on Caprica with the remaining survivors.
Yeah, and that's the last we hear of him this episode.
It is,
and that's actually the last we hear of this Viper crew for a little bit as well, our Raptor crew. And I feel like this might, unless there's anything else that is just burning holes in your hearts, might be a good place to pause as we approach the territory of part 2.
Well, before we go out, do we want to do like predictions
Are you?
from our first time viewer?
Yeah,
Is that a thing we want to do?
Yeah, let's
It's
do
up
it.
to y'all, but
Predictions, questions.
Yeah, I have a couple little things. Our last episode, I said that my assumption is that we're going to find out there are some people who are Cylons that we don't realize because they're so advanced at this point. My top contender right now is the as yet unnamed intern kid who's following President Roslin around.
Billy.
Ooh.
Billy.
Yeah.
Who I have a theory about Billy that kind of spans, it's sort of outside the scope of this episode, but maybe we'll talk about him and my thoughts on Billy next week.
Yeah, we can talk about him next week.
And so I'm suspicious of Billy or anybody who gets lost on a spaceship.
Which he does very early on. Finds himself in the what's the word for it?
The locker room?
It's like the bathroom, but that's not the right word.
I don't know, but
What's like the military word for that?
latrine?
The latrine?
The head?
The head?
There's
Yeah,
basically like the showers.
Yeah. And so that was suspicious to me. And then the other thing is that there's a moment early on where Six looks up and she says, about time, I wonder when you get here. And I don't know who she's talking to yet, right? So that was all of the other stuff I kind of see where they're setting up and have like an idea of where like the beats might move, but that was a sort of glaring open-ended thing that I'm curious about.
That's a great catch too, because I saw that this time around and don't remember that really resonating with me in previous watches. But this time around, it very much stood out to me when she said that.
Yeah, I didn't note it the first time through either. So
Now, see, I took that because she kind of looks up as she says it. I kind of took that as she's looking up and seeing the Cylon fleet,
Quite possibly.
coming into orbit of the planet, and it's like, oh, there they are.
I have my own thoughts of who she might be talking to, but that is so deep in spoiler territory that
Yeah, let's not go there.
we're not going to.
Yeah, you and I can't make predictions. That's not allowed.
her relationship with what she's calling faith and referring to God, I think, is really interesting. And that's the only word I have for it right now because she hasn't given us much. But I'm very interested in how sort of quote unquote faith seems to be working in this show too.
It's not too much of a spoiler to say that the Cylons and the humans have very different concepts of their religion, and that does play a very important role.
Cool.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm excited.
Awesome.
Excellent.
Well, do you have any questions or parting thoughts before we spool up the FTL drives?
No, I think I'm ready to watch the second half of this.
Sweet.
So that is Battlestar Galactica miniseries part 1. And of course, we're going to be following up next week with part 2. And you can check us out at Set Condition 1 throughout the podcast.com, or of course, wherever you listen to podcasts. But in the meantime, we're going to spool up the FTL drives and make the jump to Ragnar Anchorage, and we'll see you there.
Begin jump prep. We're leaving. We'll be back. Start your prep.
Set Condition 1 is a Night Shift Radio production. Visit nightshiftradio.com for more information.